Hello, Utah! Let's have a round of applause for this great state. Now, I'm from New York, so I'm still getting my bearings on the place. But I like Utah. It's got a strong sense of collaboration, and I think that it's understood here that community is where value is really made. So, with that recognized, I've actually started my company, Vistim Labs, here in the Salt Lake area. And what we do is, what we aim to achieve is to predict neurological disorders before there are any symptoms so that we can intervene before anyone has to suffer. And our go-to-market, our product, is the world's first cognitive evaluation using functional brain analysis. Now, I guess before I go into this, if I could get some audience participation, could you raise your hand if you have known someone with Alzheimer's disease? It's a lot of hands. Does anyone here know someone who's been treated for Alzheimer's disease, someone who's recovered? I don't see a single hand. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a problem, and that's not for lack of trying. There's an obstacle in the way. And that obstacle is that we can't treat neurological disorders if we don't know who will have one. Right now, there's no technology to know that someone is progressing in the direction of one of these diseases. Alzheimer's, the most common disease, is diagnosed 15, 20 years late after significant changes in quality of life for the individual, after significant neuronal death in their brain. You can remove Alzheimer's from this person. You can give them the Biogen at-home drug. They're still not the same. What we need is the ability to know who will have this disorder before it's too late. Modern solutions are dated. Pen and paper, questionnaires. These things are designed to detect late-stage disease. They're not designed to detect early disease. They're not suitable for identifying people who are meaningful for research, people that we can actually change the lives of, to demonstrate clinical utility of these drugs that are being developed. And that's why the future with Vistim is a patented system where we use artificial intelligence and brain activity to find the first signs of cognitive decline. Our method is patented. We're not a hardware company, we're a software company. But our method can be licensed to anybody. And what we do basically is we collect brain activity while you look at a screen. We show shapes, lines that are black and white mostly, different levels of acuity. We show them to you, and we look at how your brain is responding. From there, we put that data into an artificial intelligence platform, and we predict how you would perform on a wide variety of cognitive assessment tools. Now, how does this method work? It's not well understood, at least publicly, but damage starts in the optical nerve for things like Alzheimer's disease. If you do a retinal scan, you'll see amyloid beta in the eye, in the retina, before it appears in the brain. That is what we are able to track with electrical brain activity. We can track the subtle, small changes, the small damage of brain cells in the brain as they affect electrical responses, subconscious responses to, as you can see in the picture, horizontal, vertical lines. Our progress to date is we've done 2 clinical studies, one of them here in the US, the other in Germany. We have a 3rd clinical study plans, this time, multi-center. With a number of universities, we're pursuing a $1 million grant, and this is to demonstrate our ability to predict cognitive decline. I'll walk you through some of our results now. At Columbia University, we were able to show that electrical activity in the brain changed substantially for somebody who was developing mild cognitive impairment, MCI. And we were able to differentiate those people from those who had amyloid beta protein in their brain. Amyloid beta sometimes predates Alzheimer's disease. Typically, an Alzheimer's disease diagnosis is the intersection of cognitive impairment and amyloid beta. So this was basically showing us that this was possible. We were able to patent our method at this stage. Following this, we worked with Ludwig Maximilian University in Germany, where we were able to differentiate people who were considered amyloid positive and those who were considered amyloid negative. These are people who, would traditionally be referred to additional procedures like a PET scan, an MRI, to confirm the diagnosis. Someone who's amyloid positive typically would have Alzheimer's disease. And so you can see that, with electrical activity, we could actually identify who these people were. Not only that, we could actually predict what score they would get on a PET scan. We were able to predict how much amyloid beta was in their brain. And we were able to also correlate our findings with recognized cognitive evaluations, like the mini mental state exam and CRAD, and many others. We now have a consortium of universities that are working with us, with Vistim, pursuing that $1 million grant application with the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation. And in this work, what we will do is we will predict across a wide variety of cognitive evaluations so that we can begin to look at clinical utility. Our approach to market, what are we doing here? You remember my pitch at the beginning. Can we predict these diseases ahead of time? We have a 3-step process to achieve that result. Step 1 is to replace the cognitive evaluations. We can do that easily. Step 2 is joining the gold standard for Alzheimer's definitive diagnosis so that you do not have to look at amyloid. You do not have to have all of these different factors like a history of cognitive decline to know that you have the disease. Step 3 will be to have that early detection through longitudinal data, basically tracking people over time. Step 1 represents our largest market opportunity. It's almost a $20 billion per year industry. That is how much money that Medicare, and only Medicare, spends on cognitive evaluations. And the value is poor. These are not standardized. There are almost 100 different cognitive evaluations on the market. And depending on what university you go to, what hospital you go to, what country you live in, you might get a different test. Your test is biased. It might not work depending on the native language that you speak. And the result that you get is also a number out of 20. It's a questionnaire. It's going to be highly variable. Instead, an alternative is Vistim, where we can predict across all of these cognitive tests. We can show you how you'd perform. We can triangulate what the issue might be. And it's easy. It can be run by a lab tech. It doesn't require a trained psychologist. It doesn't require a trained psychometrician. And basically what that means, what that translates to, is easier effort for the clinician and, of course, better outcomes for the patient. Step 2, it's admittedly a smaller market, but this is defining Alzheimer's disease. And the reason why this is so important is that first, it's very achievable for us because we already predict PET scan results. But secondly, this is how we unlock those treatments. There are over 140 treatments right now with the FDA waiting to be approved, but they can't link themselves to clinical outcome because it's not enough to show that you're changing chemicals in somebody's brain. How does it change their quality of life? How does it change their ability to remember the names of their family members? That is where Vistim comes into play because we can measure cognitive decline. Step 3, and this is the one that's most exciting, of course, is being able to intervene early. So once we are linked to Alzheimer's disease and we can link ourselves to clinical outcomes, step 3, early detection, this is how we're able to finally accelerate treatment and intervention, treat people early so that the burden on the US economy shrinks. Right now, that burden sits at around $300 billion spent annually to care for these people because it's hard to, If we can treat early, if we can test early, what that adds is it adds new testing to the market, $15 billion worth of new testing, and it also grows our market by allowing these treatments to reach patients. So our timeline is, it's pretty simple, but it adds up to about $35 billion in market that we can capture. And we're attractive as an exit to pharmaceutical, drug discovery, disease management therapy companies as early as stage 1. Because once we're in this path of measuring efficacy of treatments, now we become the enabler for the next drug to be prescribed. Our regulatory roadmap is pretty simple. We've already done 2 clinical studies. We have a 3rd planned. After this, we're going to do a clinical validation. Following that one, we're going to do a clinical utility study. And then we can aim to be in the market as a de novo device by 2024, 2025. One important step that must happen in this place, and in order to do the clinical utility trial, will be to partner with one of these intervention companies. We are not an intervention company, we are a diagnostic. And so we are looking for a partner. If there is someone in the audience who is working on some type of intervention with cognitive decline, or knows someone like that, then please do connect us. So our go-to-market strategy, admittedly, is very simple, because cognitive evaluations are reimbursed by Medicare. They're also supposed to be done routinely in annual wellness visits. Many people get these cognitive evaluations every year, and it's just a shame that the value is so low. An alternative is an easy-to-use tool that takes less time and allows for superior decision-making ability. And that's what we can do with Vistim. We're pursuing FDA approval, as mentioned, and with the successful third study that we're doing now, we should have all the data that we need to inform that study design. So the team. Now I guess I get to introduce myself. So my name is James Hamet. I am the CEO and founder of the company. I started another company in the neurotech space, not my first rodeo. That company is called Neurable. We are in Boston. It's a $9 million company right now. That's how much we raised. And what we were doing were mind-controlled wheelchairs. We also did virtual reality games that you can control with your mind. That's my expertise, the intersection of human perception and, well, being able to do something with it. I'm also published recently in Nature's scientific reports for my discovery of novel biomarkers. So very knowledgeable in the area, and you can probably tell I'm slightly younger. I'm early in my career. So I'm fortunate to have someone like Dr. Zanow on my team. He has a company called Neuromotion. They're based in Berlin, Germany. And what they do is they actually produce some of the world's best medical devices, some of which are actually on the International Space Station as we speak. So what we're looking for right now is $5 million in 18 months. The reason that I need that time and those resources is so that I can produce my MVP. Right now, everything that we've done has been in the confines of a laboratory. It's using EEG. It's using very simple technology. Building the MVP is relatively easy. But that said, it still has to be done. And as you can tell, or as you can guess, managing clinical trials also has some overhead. The $1 million Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation grant that we're pursuing is it only covers direct costs. So there's that to consider as well. We aim to be in the market by 2024, and this raise will allow us to proceed to our step 2, which is addressing that Alzheimer's disease diagnosis. So that is everything from me. Thank you so much, and let's hear some questions.
James, you mentioned, sorry, over here. Hi.
Oh, thank you.
You mentioned early detection is the key. And
Yes.
testing is supposed to be done, but maybe it's not being done. How do you address that? How do you change clinical practice to get early enough measurements so you can see a change? That's part one. And secondly, do you have any longitudinal data where you can show progression and maybe stratify patients by their underlying disease aggressiveness?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So 2 parts. I will answer the second part first because it's shorter. Longitudinal data, we are lacking that. However, at Ludwig Maximilian University in Germany, we are doing follow-ups. So we do have about 10 patients who we've done follow-ups with. Their amyloid status hasn't totally changed. We're also not doing any interventions with them. We haven't tested them for cognitive evaluation. In terms of your second question, the first part, which was about how can we, I guess, change the state-of-the-art care. It's true that Medicare does cover all these cognitive evaluations, and they're not always done. You have to make a cognitive complaint first to your physician, and then the physician has to, prescribe it for you. But that said, like, the physician is a very smart person. There's a reason that they're not giving these evaluations to everybody, and it's because the utility is very low. What is it going to tell me if somebody gets a poor score on this test? It doesn't mean that they have Alzheimer's disease. It doesn't mean that they have amyloid in their brain. There's such high variability and subjectivity. I can't even compare my data from one university to another because the cognitive evaluation that they use is different. So I would say that that's probably the biggest challenge here, and the answer to that challenge is to give clinicians a tool that they can finally share data with. I think that another thing that would be very important in this respect would be the fact that this actually can guide decision-making for the patient regarding their care. If I'm detecting that the person has Alzheimer's disease, but only in the late stage, that becomes the only time that I become useful as their provider. But if I'm able to detect it early, then now I can intervene early. And by the way, there are many cures, many treatments for Alzheimer's disease. I guess I can't use the word cure, but there are lifestyle changes that work, and that shows promise towards something like drug discovery efforts. Is there another question?
Yes, one more.
Dennis.
Jim, great presentation. One question, can you describe what it would be like for a patient to go to the doctor and get the device and get the test, just to get a sense of it?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, you guys probably are like, what is going on? There's no surgery involved. So EEG is a very typical hospital equipment. What you do is you put the device on, and then you look at a screen. And I will show squares, checkerboard patterns, all sorts of different things. And basically what's happening is I'm looking at how the electrical activity from your eyes is traveling to the back of your brain and how you're interpreting those pictures. So the patient experience is, you're just looking at pictures on a screen. But then at the end of the result, yeah, you have your paper at the end that says, hey, this is how you would perform across cognitive tests, were you to take them.
How long does it take to get the report once you get the data?
Yes, once we have the data, I mean, it can be same day, 30 minutes. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.